You're listening to The Bible Guys, a podcast where a couple of friends talk about the Bible in fun and practical ways.
Hey everybody, welcome to The Bible Guys. We are Chris and Jeff, and I'll give you one guess as to who's Chris and who's Jeff.
Yeah.
Don't know what to say?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what if they're not
I was trying
watching?
to figure it out.
What if they're not watching, they're only listening? Then
Yes.
they just have to determine by the voice, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So Chris is the smoky voice.
The one that sounds young and handsome is Jeff.
Oh, I was going to say the one who sounds gritty and smoky.
Yes.
That's Chris.
Is Chris. That's right.
Yeah. So I always say that when I go into a doctor's office and they say, okay, do you drink? No. Do you smoke? And I say no. And they look at me, and I'm telling you, almost always, they go, really?
Yeah. Ever?
Yeah. Yeah. So because of my voice.
Yeah.
That's what they do. So,
Well, you got a great radio voice.
Is it though?
Yeah, yeah. It's a good radio voice. It's memorable.
Well, yeah, that's
It's
probably
memorable.
true.
You got a great radio face. That's great.
Radio face.
Yeah. God really gifted you.
Yeah, I remember when I first got to college, Dr. Gary Gray said, "Hey, you looking for a job?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "There's a job at a dough factory that I can hook you up with." And everybody standing there thought he was totally serious. And he goes, "You'd be great." He goes, "You'd be great for this job more than anybody else." He goes, "Do you really want it?" And I said, "Yeah, I need some money." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "It's an assembly line job." And he said, the big pile of dough comes by, and he goes, "And what you have to do is you have to slam your face down and make monkey cookies." That's what he said.
Make monkey cookies. Yeah.
It was really great.
Your buddy Jeff Miller has a raspy voice too.
Does he?
Yeah. A little bit. He talks like this. Yeah.
I didn't really qualify it as that.
Yeah, he does. He's got a raspier voice.
Maybe because I'm the king of rasp.
Yeah. He doesn't have a butter smooth voice like mine.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So
yeah.
he's got a raspy voice like yours.
And your butter smooth voice is is nothing compared to Wesley's.
Yes. Well, who's Wesley?
Who is Wesley? The guy that filled in for you in
I know.
that
He
chair.
killed it. He killed it. Hey, by the way, I came into the office. All of you, everybody that you said something nice about Wesley filling in a couple weeks ago, it was every day. Multiple people would post about how great Wesley was.
Yeah, he's so
I
good.
went to Wesley and told him he's uninvited to help anymore.
Right. You feel threatened.
Yeah, exactly. No, he did a great job. Great job. So really thankful for him and for Kyle. They both did a great job.
Hey, so this segment's going to be pretty quick. This is one of our favorite segments, and it's called Who's Most Likely?
Yes.
So we have 5 different things, and we're going to vote very quickly.
And typically the answer is Chris. Chris is just most likely.
Yeah.
Here we go.
All right, number 1. Who's most likely to start a food fight at a fancy dinner?
Chris.
That's Chris.
Yes.
Yeah.
See, I told you.
Now, here's the question. Have you ever started a food fight at a fancy dinner?
No, I have not.
Have you ever started a food fight?
Yes.
Oh, you have?
Yeah, but not at a fancy dinner.
Okay. Well, it depends on how fancy it is, I guess. I would say I've only started like 5 food fights.
Yeah, only.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as a kid.
I wonder how many food fights our listeners have started. You're like, only 5. Like, it's not many.
Right,
it's 4 3/4 more than everybody else.
I want to say this.
Hey, did you smash your cake in your wife's face when you guys got married?
Yes.
Yeah, well, there you go. That's where it starts.
Yeah, there it is.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, 3 of those food fights I started were in high school.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I started them in high school, too. Yeah.
All right, number 2. Who's most likely to try to pet a wild animal?
Me.
That would be definitely you.
I have many times. Yeah.
And you try or accomplish?
One time we were in a vehicle and we pulled up next to a kudu, one of those great big giant African gazelles. They're like 600 pounds. And he came over really close and they have a beard.
Yeah.
And so I went and I just touched his beard and he pulled his head back.
Wow.
And then I started to reach back out to touch his beard again and he smashed his head on the roof of our car.
Oh, wow.
And then I waited for a second and then he started leaning back in. And I reached out to pet him on the thing, and he pulled up and pow! He hit those antlers, those big giant horns.
Yeah,
you know, they're those big twisty giant horns.
Yeah.
Smashed those on top of our car, and for years we had dent on the top of our car.
Wow.
It was one of those drive-through safari things. You know? Yeah. I do it all the time. I like to try to pet animals. I got a whole bunch of pictures of me with animals in my office.
Yeah,
I got a picture of me with a cobra.
Wow.
Remember?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's you with a camel. There's you with live crocodile.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did you ever do a crocodile wrestling thing? Did you ever go get your picture taken wrestling with a crocodile or an alligator?
I have not.
Yeah, no.
I held an alligator at a putt-putt course.
I got one where you had to sit on him. So you had to get in there and hold him, pin him down, and hold his mouth like this and get a picture?
Mine was like 2 feet.
Yeah, mine was like 6 feet. Yeah. Anyways, okay.
All right, who's most likely to try and impress someone with a magic trick that goes hilariously wrong?
We'll try to impress. That's usually both of us.
Yeah.
Magic trick. You're probably better at magic than me.
Yeah.
Goes wrong. That's always me.
Well, I've never actually, believe it or not, this is sounding funny, but I actually have done plenty of pretty big magic tricks. When I say plenty, I mean like 4, but which is a lot
public.
more. Yes, I've done it in front
Like
of
on stage.
300 to 400 people, right?
Yeah.
Only because I have.
You're a magical guy.
No, I'm not a magical guy. In fact, I did it in front of thousands, actually, because I did it on a weekend one time. But anyway, I did like escape out of a box.
Yeah.
Because my buddy Josh Eisenhart was a pretty big magician, and he taught me through and led me through, and I've used them to teach.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But nothing has ever gone wrong, thank goodness.
Yeah. So the gone wrong part's where it triggers it over to my side of the table.
So the vote is
Probably
half me, half you?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
You're most likely to do the magic trick. If I tried it, it would go horribly wrong.
Is it my imagination, or has this come up like 3 times?
The pet rock thing, only now it's about naming it something extravagant.
Isn't this the 3rd pet rock question?
It seems like it.
Who's most likely to get a pet rock and
you.
name it something extravagant?
Well, then it's clearly you.
It's clearly me.
Yeah, because I never had a pet rock.
I think.
Well, I had a pet rock given to me. I didn't get a pet rock.
I think clearly it was just only last week where we talked about pet rocks.
Yeah.
And I told you I had a collection of rocks. Remember?
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess that's me.
Extravagant names.
And we're just going to move past that, Desiree. But let's ixnay on the at rock pay. Okay. So last one. Who's most likely to forget they were supposed to be on a diet while eating a whole cake?
Ooh, I have forgotten many times that I was on a diet.
And I don't like cake, so it's going to have to be you.
And once I get started, I want to finish a thing.
Okay,
that's important.
It's clearly
I'm not a quitter.
It's clearly you then.
I don't think I've ever eaten a whole cake. Eating a whole cake's a lot.
I have not forgotten that I was on a diet.
I have,
but I have forgotten that I was supposed to be fasting.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
I was like, yes, we're going to fast, and then
yes.
Oh, good, it's lunchtime.
Right.
Forget.
I've done that.
Yep.
So anyway,
Okay.
Good. Well, thank you, Desiree.
Yeah. And I think I'm supposed to say something like, well, there you go.
Right.
Okay, today we are starting in 2 Samuel chapter 13. And do you remember the part where Nathan's confrontation with David, the curse from God is, hey, you're going to have a lot of problems in your family.
Yeah, he says you're going to live by the sword. Your whole family's going to live by the sword.
That's right. So there are many Psalms after that where David confesses sin. He does all these things. And then his family begins to grow up. You know, he has multiple wives. And so even though Bathsheba just now is expecting Solomon, David's youngest son here at this point, he already has some other children through his other wives. And again, we'll go on record as saying God forbade this, but people did it, right? And so it's not acceptable. It's not a good thing. Polygamy is not an acceptable thing to God in the Bible, but it happened for many of the people. So David has a son, and his name is Amnon. And here's what it says. Now, David's son Absalom had a beautiful sister named Tamar, and Amnon, her half-brother, fell desperately in love with her. Amnon became so obsessed with Tamar that he became ill, and she was a virgin, and Amnon thought he could never have her. But Amnon had a very crafty friend, his cousin Jonadab. He was the son of David's brother Shimeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One day, Jonadab said to Amnon, "What's the trouble? Why should the son of a king look so dejected morning after morning?" So Amnon told him, "I'm in love with Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister." "Well," Jonadab said, "I'll tell you what to do. Go back to bed and pretend you're ill, and when your father comes to see you, ask him to let Tamar come and prepare some food for you. Tell him you'll feel better if she prepares it as you watch and feeds you with her own hands." And so Amnon laid down to pretend to be sick, and when the king came to see him, Amnon asked him, "Please let my sister Tamar come and cook my favorite dishes I'll watch, and then I can eat it from her own hand." And so David agreed and sent Tamar to Amnon's house to prepare some food for him. When Tamar arrived at Amnon's house, she went to the place where he was laying down so he could watch her mix some dough. Then she baked his favorite dish for him, but when she set the serving tray before him, he refused to eat. Everyone get out of here, Amnon told his servants, and so they all left. And then he said to Tamar, now bring the food into my bedroom and feed it to me here. So Tamar took his favorite dish to him, but as she was feeding him, he grabbed her and demanded, come to bed with me, my darling sister. No, my brother, she cried, don't be foolish. Don't do this to me. Such wicked things aren't done in Israel. Where could I go in my shame? And you would be called one of the greatest fools in Israel. Please, just speak to the king about it, and he'll let you marry me. But Amnon wouldn't listen to her, and since he was stronger than she was, he raped her. Then suddenly Amnon's love turned to hate, and he hated her even more than he had loved her. Get out of here, he snarled at her. And then she says, no, no, Tamar cried. Sending me away now is worse than what you'd already done to me. But Amnon wouldn't listen to her, and he shouted for his servant, demanded, throw this woman out and lock the door behind her. So the servant put her out and locked the door behind her, and she was wearing a long, beautiful robe, as was the custom in those days for the king's virgin daughters. But now Tamar tore her robe and put ashes on her head, and then, with her face in her hands, she went away crying. Her brother Absalom saw her and asked, is it true that Amnon has been with you? Well, my sister, keep quiet for now, since he's your brother. Don't you worry about it. And so Tamar lived as a desolate woman in her brother Absalom's house. When King David had heard what had happened, he was very angry. And though Absalom never spoke to Amnon about this, he hated Amnon deeply because of what he had done to his sister. What a horrible story.
Horrible.
You want to talk about destroying a family.
And because we're going to skip it, Absalom kills...
Well, we're not going to skip it.
Oh.
Yeah, we're just going to do the Absalom stories.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then,
I mean, Absalom is a massive piece of David's life. We can't just skip those.
Okay, for sure. Yeah. But let's go back and say, let me champion what you said, which is probably the worst family story in the Bible by far.
One of them. Yeah.
You think?
Sure.
I think it wins.
Well, there's Lot and his daughters.
I know.
There's Judah and his. Yeah. There's some pretty horrible ones.
Yeah.
There's. Yeah.
I think this is worse.
It's pretty horrible.
Yeah, and anyway, the thing that stands out, and I know that you've probably heard this before, but the thing that stands out to me is it says after the deed was done, it said he began to hate her, and it says the hate that he had for her was greater than the love that he had felt for her, right?
Yeah.
Which means it's proof that it wasn't love.
That's right.
It was lust.
Right.
That's what it was. And so many times we try to convince ourselves that what we want is right because we justify it for ourselves. But yet what we're really doing is we're kidding ourselves, we're fooling ourselves. And that is a fantastic example in the worst way of what it means to try to convince ourselves of something. So Amnon absolutely convinced himself that he was in love, so much so that he told his cousin, he's like, I am in love with Tamar. But it wasn't love.
No.
It wasn't love at all. Because if it was love, then here's, this obviously beautiful woman who says, hey, let me speak reason to you. Everything she said was absolutely reasonable.
Right.
She said, you would be known as a fool. She said, this would be a wicked thing. And she said, by the way, we're not like other countries.
Right.
Israel is not like the countries you've heard of.
Right.
Such wicked things are not done here, like in other places.
Right.
And she says, so she's laying out all the different reasons. That's number one. Number two, you be labeled as a fool. Number three, this is a wicked thing for me. And then she says, hey, listen, it's customary for somebody back then to marry their half sister. They were, they're the same father, but back then that was a thing. So she says, hey,
more in other nations, but yes,
more in other nations.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But she says, hey, go to the king. And I don't know whether she was seriously suggesting that or whether she was just suggesting that to speak reason to him. Trying to buy time and get out of there. Yep. So who knows, right? She may have been serious, or she may have just tried to speak to his insanity. But either way, he says no, and then when he tries to throw her out, think about it. She says it again. She says, no, don't do this, because this is worse than what you already did. Like don't throw me out now. Maybe she's thinking to herself, hey, now we have no choice but to proceed and go to the king, right? Let's try to salvage this wickedness that's been done. So here's a woman who's beautiful. She's cunning. She has high position. She's incredibly wise. and all of a sudden he hates her with more love than he loved her with.
Yeah, more hate than he loved her with. Yeah.
Yeah, right. That means it wasn't love.
Right.
Because obviously this woman is amazing, even in the midst of distress.
Yeah.
And so he never loved her.
Yeah. So there's a note here in the Life Application Study Bible, and it says, love and lust are very different. After Amnon raped his half-sister, his love turned to hate. Although he had claimed to be in love, he was actually overcome by lust. Love is patient. Lust requires immediate satisfaction. Mm-hmm. Love is kind. Lust is harsh. Love does not demand its own way. Lust does. You can read about the characteristics of real love in 1 Corinthians 13. Lust may feel like love at first, but when physically expressed, it results in self-disgust and hatred of the other person. If you just can't wait, what you feel is not truly love.
That's amazing.
Isn't that a great note?
Oh, because love is self-sacrificing.
That's right. That's right.
It's not self-gratifying.
So in a biblical relationship, in a biblical marriage and all that kind of stuff, desire should be there, right? But desire takes a second position to real love. But in a godless situation, it's just pure lust and desire, and he indulged that. So Amnon was the firstborn son of King David. Amnon was born between the time David became famous and the time David became king, right? That's kind of interesting. And then he winds up being this prince. There's another note here that says he grew into a prince with too much time on his hands and too little control over his thoughts. You know, a lot of times David went through struggle. David was a poor kid living in these valleys and watching his sheep and not much opportunity. He developed great character and tremendous skills and a walk with God. And then when his opportunity came, he seized it. But then David made a very easy life for his family. David's struggles made David into a powerful and strong man. He had his own weaknesses, but what we tend to do in our weakest moments, oftentimes our children who have much easier lives than us usually wind up doing in excess. We do it in moderation, it does in excess.
Yeah.
So here's David one time having an affair, one day, right? And it winds up becoming a pattern in many of his sons' lives, right? It becomes a thing that they do over and over and over and over and over again.
You know, when somebody is raised as the son or the daughter of somebody powerful and they live in luxury and they have everything that their heart desires, why is it that most of the time, it seems through my personal interaction and observation, like personally, and then also in almost every movie you've ever seen in your entire life, or sitcom or whatever, they're a spoiled brat, right? Yeah. And they don't have the character, and they run amok, and they're not worthy to take over the family business or whatever, especially if it's super successful and everything else. They're spoiled rotten. They don't have character and all these different things. I mean, and so you look at that, and everybody listening nods their head and says, yes, absolutely, that's the case. Probably both personally by observation. Oh, it's the boss's son, that kind of thing, right? Or through culture. And listen, even back then, the thing you just said was exactly what I just said. Yeah. So here it is, thousands of years ago, and Amnon raised the same way, different than the way King David was raised as a poor shepherd, making his way to, the journey to become the king, the hard way. And then here's Amnon, just abusing his power, being selfish, thinking there's no consequence to his actions because, he's entitled and all these different things. Anyway, it made me think of, strangely enough, bear with me here, Dave Ramsey. He's very well known. He's a financial advisor, right? Okay. Well, obviously he has a bunch of money. So he was telling the story one time of making his kids suffer. And he was saying something like, hey, you have to go out and earn your own paycheck for your own car. And his son is like, Dad, you can buy me any car I want. And he said, son, one day you're going to inherit a bunch of money. He said, when you do inherit that, he goes, I want you to have the character that goes with it. Right. And he yelled at him. And I remember when he said that, like the audience cheered when, you say it in front of an audience. And I thought to myself, wow, you have to really go above and beyond if you have the means to give to your children. And all of us want to give to our children. Yeah,
we all want our kids' lives to be better than ours.
Yes.
But the problem is what we tend to mean is we want to remove all the struggle.
Right.
But struggle is what makes you strong.
Yes. Yeah. And so it takes incredible intentionality to have means and to somehow make sure that your kids aren't raised entitled,
Right.
spoiled. And by the way, this not only goes for his fame and his wealth and his privilege, but it also speaks into his faith.
Right.
His faith, right? Because when you have struggle, what do? You depend on God more, don't you?
Right.
Right? When you have a lot, you depend on God less.
It surprises me in here a little bit. In their cultures, oftentimes we think of Turkish sultans kind of a harem where, or like the King and I, when you see this harem and all these women are living together, that's not super practical.
Right.
Right. So most of the time, culturally, these people who had multiple wives managed multiple households. So one of the reasons why Amnon felt this way was that he knew about Tamar, but he didn't have access to Tamar.
Right.
Right. So he was lusting after her from afar, and he's wanting her, and so he has to go get his dad's permission to even have Tamar come to his room. Right. So it's really strange to me that as endangered of a life that David lived, he didn't recognize danger in his own home.
Yeah.
Why is this kid asking this girl to come from her home into his home?
Yeah.
Right? Same age, same everything.
He probably thought they were close. But
he knew that they weren't. That's
did he though?
Well, Abinadab said that because he's talking, I'm in love with Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister. They didn't mix homes very much. They would have known about each other. They would have showed up at big family dinners and things like that, but they would have lived separate lives a lot. Culturally, that's the way it would have been. And so in this situation, that's why he has to come and say, hey, would you send specifically that one? And would you send her to my room specifically? Right? As a matter of fact, at first when she brings him food, he's laying on a couch somewhere or something, right? But then he invites her to his bedroom. So that means he invited her to his apartment. You understand? They're living separately.
Well, it did say house. Yeah,
right.
She's in his house.
Right. Everybody's living separately. And David doesn't recognize the danger there. And every once in a while, I'll set up rules or guidelines for staff or for people that are under my responsibility. And sometimes they'll say, don't you trust me? And I'm like, dude, I don't trust me.
Right.
We shouldn't trust. We should always be setting up systems for protection and safety. So a guy who lived perpetually in danger let his guard down in his own home, is what I'm saying. So I think David carries a little bit of responsibility with this, that he did not have the ability or the wherewithal to see there's danger for my daughter, right, in this situation, who normally wouldn't be here. Now, that's different. If they always lived together and they were always around each other, well, that's a different thing. But this is a very abnormal request. It's why he had to fake like he was sick. There's a problem. That's why you need to send her to come and help me. Because if he was just like, hey, I'd really like to start hanging out with Tamar, Dad, Dad would have been like, no. Right? So that's why Jonadab had to make up a lie in order to create a problem, in order for David to go, oh, how are we going to solve the problem for my firstborn son, the heir? Oh, yeah, Tamar's a nice girl. She can come in. She makes good cake. Go ahead. We'll bring her in. That's what happened, is it's a fake problem.
Right.
The whole thing. And it's so out of the ordinary. And so, I've mentioned this before. If you think you see a thing, you're probably seeing a thing. Right? If your spidey senses go up, stop it. Stop the thing. Don't allow it to go forward. And if you made a mistake, oh well. But I think that there's a lot of value in parents, and I'm not saying with your own children all the time, but just in general, if it's out of the ordinary and there is potential for danger. The other thing is David could have made sure that she came in with other people. Right. And hey, don't leave her. And hey, if he kicks everybody out, you need to leave too, right? You can teach it. He didn't. So what happens is it all comes down to this, but Amnon had a very crafty friend.
Right.
We got to watch out what our friends do, because the kind of friend that'll co-sign your sin is not really a friend.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And so there's so many messages in this passage. So I'm not trying to blame David. I'm just saying it's just weird to me that he missed this one.
Yeah.
Well, hey, it's going to get crazy from here. Crazy from this point on.
Yeah.
Which is what Nathan said would happen.
That's right. All right. Well, hopefully we'll see you then on the Bible Guys.